Good morning, Diana. How are you?
Um, Very confused how we're already at the end of July.
Yes.
This is confusing to me.
And
We're
the season
recording now
finale.
at the end of July and our season finale. And my middle is turning 10 on Monday, very last day of
Yeah.
July. So I will now have two double digits. And I don't know how to feel about this. Like, I'm excited. They're really cool kids. I love who they're turning into. But we're well over halfway 18 now. We're well over halfway to legal adults, which Amanda and I have talked about this a lot. Who decided 18 is
Yeah.
adulthood? Like, that's foolishness. But still, we're over halfway there. And I'm okay today. I may not be okay on Monday. So, yeah, how are you this morning?
I am good. We have had a very, very full week. And like I was telling you earlier, we are literally running out of time. I don't know how. Like, I'm very meticulous about my planning and my scheduling, and we are here at this time for this long, and we are sticking to that. And yet, it's like, oh, how is it already 7:39 a.m.? Like, I just woke up 5 minutes ago.
Uh-huh.
It was 6 o'clock 10 minutes ago.
Yes, it was.
So, yeah, that's how
Someone's,
we
I
are.
think someone's speeding up our clocks because I've been having the same experience, except it feels like it's been this whole month has been just sped up. I don't know how else to put it. Like,
Hmm.
can't keep up. But we're going to talk about slowing down
Yeah.
in our podcast today. Ironically enough, when we can't keep up, we're talking about slowing down. Um, so I'm pumped because this is the only book that I have finished at the right time for the 1000 Hours Outside book club. I love the books that she selected, but either I've read them out of order or I just haven't read them yet because I've had other things that have been on my plate to read. And I do have the Alistair Humphreys book though, finally, that you wanted me to read back in like January or February or something like
It's
that.
it's just so fun, and it's not like it is like a read-through book, but it's not like a read-through book. It's more
Mm.
like, here's your recipe for fun.
Hmm.
This is
Yes.
something I suggest. Bike riding across all of Europe.
Hmm.
So fun.
Yeah. Well, um, if the listeners don't know, Amanda, after she read that book, she got at my oldest a tent, a single, like a, it could be two people if you're little, tent for his birthday. And he has already used it so much. And I thought you'd like to know, Amanda, we've got a family of that are friends of ours coming this weekend. And Ed has been talking to his friend for weeks now. And an integral part of their weekend, something they have decided they have to do, is sleep out in the field in the tent together overnight, another night.
Oh my gosh, I
And
love it.
I love it. I am trying not to be a downer because I'm not sure they're going to make it. But even if they start, even if they're out there just for a couple of hours, like I feel like that's a success that they got to experience that and they got to try it.
Yes.
So I thought you'd enjoy knowing that they're going to have their own little adventure out there. But today, instead of that one, which would be a good one to talk about, we are talking about Kim John Payne's Simplicity Parenting book. And on the cover, it says, using the extraordinary power of less to raise calmer, happier, and more secure kids. Kim John Payne is a master's in education, is his degree that he has on the book. When you listen to him, it feels like he must have some other education in there somewhere, some social work or some psychology or something like that. Um, he has been a counselor, educator, consultant, and researcher for over 30 years, working with kids and families and schools. He actually started part of his career in, um, what are they called? Refugee camps, right? And I don't remember what country he was in, but he started a lot of his work in refugee camps with children. Um, and he was working with kids who had PTSD while we were still grappling with what PTSD even is as a definition and what does it look like and how do we treat it. And he was seeing that in children in these refugee camps. I was introduced to Kim John Payne and his book through the 1000 Hours Outside podcast with Jenny Urich. And if you have not listened to her podcast, it's fabulous. Add it to your docket. She has so many great authors and speakers on there. And what captured me in his interview was him talking about this cumulative stress reaction that we're going to talk about towards the end of this podcast, which almost looks like PTSD in our kids, but it's not classically PTSD because there's not one big traumatic event. It's this cumulative stress that um, stagnates our kids and puts them in this chronic state of stress and anxiety and wanting to control things that they can control because other things feel out of control. So that's kind of my introduction to Kim John Payne. His book um, is good. It's really challenging for parts of it. And if you are a perfectionist, don't go into it and do everything he says. Like, don't do that. Go into it and say, okay, what is one thing that I can accomplish that speaks to me the most? That's honestly the easiest to grab. What's the easiest thing that I can take out of this and simplify? So that's kind of our introduction. Amanda, I can answer these first because, guys, when I say time got away from us, I did not get my notes written in time to get Amanda the questions. So I may answer them first.
And that works out great because I was telling Diana, like, I looked down at the clock and it was 12 minutes before I needed to call her, and I'm listening to the book still. And I have 11 minutes left to go. And I'm like, I need to speed this up to 1.7 speed on Audible. So I didn't even finish the book until right before I called.
So what I'm hearing is it's really fresh. Like it's going
Yes.
to be really easy for you to remember what you read.
Yes. I
So,
feel like I know Carla right now.
right, Carla is great. I love Carla. In your words, like just for our starter question, what was your takeaway on why we should simplify areas of our children's lives? And what is the goal or benefit of doing so with simplification?
I think my takeaway from it was if we can simplify our children's lives, it can allow them to be children.
Yeah.
We are not overloading their schedules like an adult would. We are not making them the head of the household
Mhm.
and making declarations for the household. We are not expecting them to have adult conversations or feel adult emotions, identify adult emotions. They can simply be a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I It sounds weird to say that we want to give our children a chance to be a kid in a world where play is so glorified
Mhm,
than for adults. You would think it would be easy for us to let kids be kids. We're in a world where we just glorify playing all the
mm,
time. Video games, watching movies, getting a boat and going sporting, going to amusement parks, going golfing, watching professional ball games. Like we glorify play, but we don't give that to our kids. We don't
mhm,
let our kids just be kids and play. Um, I think for me, it was like a lot like you said, to give our children their childhoods back. Like this is a way for us to give our children their childhoods back, to give them the space and freedom to also discover themselves. Because I think so many of our kids' schedules are so full and we've orchestrated it for them. They haven't had a chance to just say, well, what do I like? What am I interested in? Because mom says I should be interested in this thing over here, so I guess I'm interested in it. but we haven't really given them a chance to discover who they are and what they're interested in. I think also a big takeaway for me was it's giving them a back, it's giving them back security and a feeling of safety, like a place where, like, okay, I know what's going to happen. I know how mom is going to react if this happens. I know I'm going to have this free time over here to process. I know that we as a family are all going to sit down together for one meal a day. I know that on Saturdays, this is our usual thing that we do. Like it gives them that rhythm and that sense of security of the world is generally a good place and feels safe. Um, I think that was a really big one for me. I never
Mhm.
really thought about your life being so full that it becomes unpredictable and doesn't feel safe.
Mhm.
Um, so, question number two, in the 1000 Hours Outside Book Club, he has questions, which I looked at the other night.
I
They're in the
forgot. I'm doing the entire book club, and
yep.
I forgot there's questions in these books.
So you never answered any of the questions?
I did Alistair Humphreys.
Well, there's questions. And I didn't use all of her questions because some of them were like you needed to prepare and come in with quotes and stuff. But this one was she asks, after reading this book, what do you think the purpose of childhood is? Or at least according to Kim John Payne, what is the purpose of childhood?
I think the purpose of childhood, for like my idea of it anyway, after reading this, is to be emotionally stable and prepared to face the challenges of adulthood.
Right.
Like
It builds resiliency.
you don't keep their schedules very, very, very simple their entire lives. You slowly add things in. Like he talked about that, like organized sports may not be ideal for my 2-year-old. Like,
Right.
really, what's he gonna do?
Right.
But when my 2-year-old is 17, Shane and I decided very early on, at 13, he has to find one activity to participate in, one organized group. That can be a theater club, that can be basketball, baseball,
Music
football,
lessons.
music. It can be whatever, but it has to be organized and there has to be an adult over it that is not us.
Mhm.
And then by the time he's 16, he also has to work in the church.
Mhm.
He has to have one job. If that job is to go in on Sunday mornings and turn the lights on and off,
Mhm.
great. You have to work in the church. By 18, Hoscat had best have a job.
Uh-huh.
I'll probably require that a little earlier.
I think it's good to have it a little bit before 18 because it gives them a chance to practice and fail while they're still home.
Yeah,
Like you've got that safety net of, oh, you got fired? Okay, well, let's examine, let's look at the black box evidence. Like, let's figure out what happened and then let's get a different job. Like let's figure this out.
yeah.
Can we do better?
But I feel like if we are expecting so much of our teeny tinies, even if we don't even realize how much we expect of them, that doesn't set them up for success. It doesn't set them up to know this is a safe space. It's not overwhelming. I can be me and I'm going to be loved for being me. And these are the problems I can solve on my own, and these are the problems I need help with. And I'm glad we're reading this book when we are, because my little has just learned the word help, please, or the term help.
Oh.
And it's adorable, but he overuses it. And it's also super cute to hear him because I am from the mountains, repping my app apparel shirt right now. And he says, "Help me."
Oh.
instead of help, which is very, like, country,
Mm-hmm.
um, very much Appalachian language, and then he that's how he's learned it. It's not help, it's hope. "Help me, please, daddy. Help me, please, mommy." And sometimes we can tell him, like, "Absolutely, thank you so much for asking," and not screaming it.
Yeah.
"I would love to help you open this thing. I would love to help you put this toy back together, but," like, yesterday was a perfect example. We got to lunch, and it's at a bar. It's not, but it is, like, it's called Mr. Brew's Tap House,
Okay.
but it's this really nice little, like, pub situation, and yes, they have, like, a bar, but a lot of people during the day go in for, like, business meetings and things like that because it's quiet. There's
Mm-hmm.
hardly anybody there. There's all these really cool restaurants around them that they just kinda blend. Um, but they have a old school Pac-Man machine,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always where we sit because that's where the high chairs are, and it's just I'm usually there by myself. There's a high chair, let's pull it over, push it back, we're good to go. But someone had drug a chair in front of the Pac-Man machine, and he climbed up in it and was just pressing buttons and moving the little joystick, and we didn't have a quarter in it, but he was having himself a blast. And then he decides he wants to get down, and he goes, "Help me." And I say, "No, you can do that. You're capable." And he goes, "Daddy, help me, please." And Shane goes, "No, mom's right. You've been getting up and down from chairs for a year now. You can do this." And he goes, "Help me." No. And we're like, we'll be here. If you fall, we'll catch you." And he like climbed out of the chair and goes, "Okay, bye." Just up and down until food came.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I love it.
But yeah, I feel like
Um,
just slowly giving them a little more and not all at once
mhm,
helps them to know they're safe and to build on that with like the hierarchy of needs.
mm, yeah. I think I think that one of the big things he talks about the task and the goal of childhood is discovering. And I even wrote down what I think he said at one point was discovering the emerging developing sense of self. Like when you're a child, you are always observing what's going on around you, and you're absorbing who am I in my family, who is my family in the world, am I important just as I am. And I think that's a really big part and a really big goal of childhood is where am I safe and am I important and can I figure this out? Like that's what you're learning as you grow. But that just who am I? Am I am I the kid who can slay dragons? Am I the kid who is the princess? Am I the explorer? Um am I the frog catcher? Who am I in my family? How am I helpful? Like, am I the best dishwasher? Am I the one who comes up with cool recipes? Am I the one who gives really good hugs? Like giving them a chance to form identities that they have formed themselves and that's not been imposed on them immediately. I think that's kind of part of childhood too, is figuring out, oh, what am I actually interested in? And what am I good at? And you don't have a chance to do that if every minute of your day is scheduled with something that someone else decided for you.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, that was kind of what I took away for what is the purpose of childhood. So for number three, this one hit me really hard, and like I've been processing it quite a bit. There's several that hit me hard, but this one was hard for me. He is interviewing a mom, and I don't remember what part of the book this is in, but he asks her what emotion she feels first when she thinks about parenting.
Yes.
Do you remember what her response was?
Dread or fear?
Yeah, it was fear. I'm pretty sure that's what he said. It was fear or anxiety, something like
Yeah,
that. She was afraid for her kids,
I'm
and that
pretty
was
sure
her
it's fear.
overwhelming feeling about parenting. And Kim John Payne says that we are in a new and precarious place in our parenting, where our fears have eclipsed our hope for our children. And he said, 2 generations ago, the main feeling you would have gotten from parenting is hope. Like, our kids have got this. Our kids are our future and they're doing great. And I know there's going to be good things for them. Like most parents anyway, not everybody, but the majority would say, I have hope. I have hope for my kids and for the future because my kids are the future. But I feel like so many of our parents in our generation, especially even our parents' generation, not so much our parents. I mean, yeah, I was an 80s kid. So I was a 80s and 90s kid. I was free range. I was still the generation before we had all the technology and very just barely, like it's just barely there. And so there was some fear there, but not like what we have now, not like what our generation of parents and the one coming right after us has.
I was thinking too, like, I'm very much true crime. Really enjoy that. It's a
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
Um, but as I was reading that part, I was trying to think, and he's not from America.
No.
And so his statistics of like has anything changed is a little skewed, but it's not that skewed.
Well, and also this book is from 2009. Like that's when this was written.
Mhm.
So got to take that into account with his statistics and also with his talk of technology because his
Yeah,
technology talk is a little.
that was dated pretty, but I was thinking of this in terms of pre and post Adam Walsh. Pre
Okay.
Adam Walsh kids and parents, free reign. I very much remember walking through a store alone. My mom's going to the grocery aisle. I want to go look at toys, and I'm 9. I'm a fairly responsible kid. I'm not going to just walk off with somebody. Um, I'm not going to cause trouble, which is would have honestly been the biggest concern. Like, will I get in
Right.
trouble? Am I going to do something bad?
Great. Am I going to do something embarrassing?
Yeah. Like that would have been the biggest concern at that point. But then Adam Walsh happened in the early 90s, I believe. And then my
Explain
brother
who
was
Adam
born.
Walsh is because I'm not having context at the moment. My brain is blank.
I can't think of his dad's name, which is ironic, because he's the celebrity. But Adam Walsh was the little boy who he was like 8 or 9 years old and was taken in a J.C. Penney's in the middle of nowhere and was never found. They think that they found a body that was most likely Adam Walsh, but they were never able to get good DNA because he was so young that it was hard to get a good sample, and it happened so long ago now. But his dad went on to start America's Most Wanted.
Mm, okay.
And so he was already a businessman, he was already a very charismatic personality, and he started looking for his child. Well, in looking for his child, he realizes, "Oh my gosh, all of these other children are missing." Or all of these horrific crimes are going unsolved.
Hmm.
This can't happen.
Hmm.
And so he helped start America's Most Wanted, like the television show, and getting that out there. And he, to this day, still champions for finding children, fighting against trafficking, helping solve crimes, children or not, petty or not. Let's get this solved. But while that's great, and look at how many crimes have been solved, how many murders have been solved, how many children have been found or prevented, and awareness is here now. We also can't turn a blind eye to it anymore because now we are aware that this is something that can happen in our world. And so we're seeing it a lot more. We're hearing it a lot more. It's on the television. We walk into Walmart and we see the wall
The
of
missing
missing
kids.
children. And then parents are like, oh, you must stay right here. Hold on to my cart. If you
Hmm.
can't hold on to me, hold on to the cart. And so there's only 7 years between me and my brother, and I can see very, very different viewpoints on
Interesting.
how we were allowed to be children
Interesting.
because he was probably 12, 13 before he was ever allowed to have that independence of, I want to go see this
Wandering
thing
around
in
the
this
store.
store. Whereas I was still single digits. I was 9 years old probably.
Hmm.
But and nothing bad ever happened. There was never even something bad almost happening.
Right, right, right. A scare. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, but we had more awareness. And this is what happens in our world. And we have to be careful and we have to be very diligent. Um, and I don't even know that, I don't think that even answered the question. I think that was just a tangent about the question, but
Well, no, it's actually part of the question. The first part of the question was, how do you think we got here? How do you think we got to this place where our fears have eclipsed our hopes for our kids?
mhm,
And for me, um, where did I put it? There it is. So part of it is that, like what you said, we are now way more aware of what's going on in our world. We have access, and this is honestly for me, it's kind of a problem because I have to be careful with it. But we have access to the entire world's news,
mhm,
the entire world. No wonder we're overwhelmed with all the bad stuff.
yeah,
Because also, that that's the biggest thing that's on the news is the bad stuff. Like that's what gets news time. And if that's what we're hearing all the time, it outweighs all of the ordinary, normal, real life stuff. And it because it's sensational and we remember it, it takes up a lot more brain space than all of the good things that happen around the world too. We don't get those. We get all of the bad things that happen around the world. So I think that's a big part of it. Like you addressed that's a big part of how did we get here where we are so scared of in our parenting. Um, so then my follow-up question, um, well, another part of I think how we got here with this fear and anxiety is we have ascribed to the mantra that more is better. Like we fully embrace this idea that more is better and everything we do should be excellent
mhm,
because that's what we get all the time. We've got all of this pressure from school systems and sports and music that not only should you be doing all the things because doing all the things is better than doing only one thing, but you should also be excellent and ahead of the curve and like overachieving in all of the things too. And while that sounds nice at first, it builds up anxiety in you because what if I'm not the best? What if I'm not doing enough things? Like I think that's part of that fear as well of this, there's the fear of our children being stolen, something bad happening to them. But then there's the fear of our children being behind
mhm,
or missing out. And I think that fear is just as heavy, if not more, because we have so much more control over our children being behind or missing out, or we should have more control. So if this is where we are, how do we get out? How do we
that's
get
a good
out of this
question.
fear and anxiety? And how do we get off the ride?
For me, I think I just found I've done a lot of research and I've done a lot of thinking. And I was talking to a former neighbor.
No.
I'm devastated. They moved yesterday and I'm absolutely
Oh, they're
devastated.
gone now?
Yeah. And we got word this week too that our other neighbors are moving.
Wait, which ones?
The ones on the other side of us that face the two houses that face each other.
Hmm.
Yeah.
With
I'm
the big
probably
board fence?
no, the other ones. Like if you're standing at my front door, they're on the right.
The brick house.
Yeah, and they have the little boy and the
Oh,
dog. I'm
oh.
devastated. But that's a whole other thing. Um, but I was talking to one of my neighbors, former neighbors this week, um, and we were talking about like taking care of your children and the fear, like she never grew up with the fear. She never had to raise a child with the fear of all of these things could happen. And it was absolutely still happening at that point. Like, honestly, human trafficking is not new.
No.
It's been happening for a long time. Sometimes it's under different names, but it's been happening for decades, years, centuries, long, long, long time. But like now we have a word for it. And she's like, I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up with the fear of that. And we live, it's statistically, we live in one of the worst places in America for this. Um, there are teams of people in our town right now that are here from the FBI to help stop it in our town because it is so bad here.
Along the interstates, if people are confused, like Kentucky, even though
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like it should be a hot spot, you're right along the interstate. And along the interstates are places where it is a more often a problem because of easy access to move.
yeah. You can get north and south on 75 very, very quickly. You can get east west from
Mhm.
64 very, very quickly. And the London Corbin area, especially, you can get to Lexington to blend in quick. You can get to Knoxville to blend in quick, but you can
Louisville.
get out of the state
Yep.
in about 20 minutes from here. And so it's a super like hotspot. It's third in the state for how bad it is. And it's wild considering we're such a small town. But like if I was just a parent, that's one thing. I'm gonna be concerned about it and I'm gonna be very watchful about it. But I have a very different, very real other issue
Right.
of I did not give birth to this child. I do not know family members for this child. I can recognize them from pictures, and I have been able to recognize them from pictures from time to
Some
time.
of them.
Yeah. Um, but like I go to a store and I run into one of his biological aunts. I go to the park and he chooses to play with this random kid at the park, and it turns out it's his biological first cousin, and two other aunts are here. I would definitely know his mom if I ran into her because I've met her before. I've had a relationship with her. I wouldn't know his dad or who we are guessing is dad. And I wouldn't know any of their families. But once you get past aunts and uncles and grandpa, I don't even know that I would recognize his grandfather, his maternal grandfather. And I've seen several pictures of him, several pictures of his maternal grandmother, who I know lives in my town. I don't think I would know them, but I know that he looks like them, and they know that he's here somewhere. and they know my name. And so I, since we brought him home, have had this fear of what if they decide to make a really bad decision and take him back because he belongs with them. He is theirs. He is biologically theirs. What if they just snatch him and they could get away very quickly with where we are? And so, in order to help my own mind deal with this and not live in a constant state of worry, it was very important to me to do research and sit down and figure out what are some things that I can put in place
Mm.
to let him have a childhood. And my absolute favorite, I wished I would have brought it with me because I need to lay it out because we're taking a trip today. I need to lay it out anyway. I wish I would have brought it. I don't want to go get it. I don't want to have to climb out of here to go get it. But I bought an Apple AirTag
Oh,
and it's $30 on Amazon.
yeah.
Like I was expecting $130, $200, 30 freaking dollars. And then I bought a $12 sleeve for the
Mm,
AirPod or AirTag. And this sleeve is silicone and has a clothing latch on it.
mm,
And so I can pin it to his clothing to where it can't be seen.
mm,
And you don't know that he has that on. And if you know that my child is wearing this, then we need to have a discussion about what are you doing in this area
mm,
to know that he has this. Like, let's
mm,
talk. Typically, I'll pin it inside of his pants pocket so that it doesn't touch his skin. If it has to go inside of his pants, I'll pin it around the diaper so he doesn't feel it and doesn't tug at it.
mm.
And at any point, I can pull up on my phone. I can do that. I can show that real quick because this is amazing and I love it. Um, you go to find my, if you have Apple, find my items.
Mm.
Oh, I'm gonna have to block that out. Here, I'll do this. Find my items. Well, I'm trying to show you without showing you my kid's full name. Here we go. So he has a little banjo.
Mm.
You see E, and then when you pull it up, like right now, you see on the map where he is.
Mm.
I can pull that up a little bit more. I can play a sound to make it ding to let me know exactly where he is, or I can just do find and it will give me step by step directions on how to get to him very quickly. And I can track him as he's walking around. The best part that we did, the best place we've ever done this is at the zoo
Ah, yeah.
because then we can sit back and let him get out of the stroller and he can go and explore the world. But at the same time, I know in worst case scenarios, I can be right there. And even if I can't be, I can get this information to the authorities if I need to. And that has been the best thing. And it honestly has taken my anxiety down so, so much. And I've talked a really, really long time about this, and I apologize. I'm just so, like, even before I read this book, I was so passionate about that. About
Mm.
how can I lower my anxiety so that my anxieties are not his anxieties.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And it was very
Because our
important to
kids
me.
know what our emotional state is.
Yeah,
And our kids feed off of our emotional state. And if our emotional state is anxiety, then they're going to be anxious, even if they don't know what they're anxious about,
yeah,
because they know how mom feels and they're going to pick up on that, or how dad feels and they're going to pick up on that.
yeah. And I don't want him to grow up worried about, like, oh no, am I going to be taken? Can I
Right.
trust this person? Is it okay to play with this kid?
Right. Right.
And so he never has to know. And if at any point he asks questions about why do I have to wear this? Well, I could do the cliche because I said so. Or because if you ran away, if you snuck off, I want to be able to find you. If we get separated, I want to be able to find you. Not necessarily if somebody from your biological family shows up and decides they want to take you home with them that day without asking any questions,
Hmm. Right.
or some creep at the zoo or the park, or but yeah, that's my take.
um, I think I think that's a really practical step to be able to take to control and um, to regulate yourself. Like you're able to take that and use it to keep you calm and help you feel safe and know that he's covered in that situation. Sorry, I was distracted earlier because I one of the kids came and yelled through the door, "Mom, there's something in the yard!" And I see chickens and dog and hear doors opening and closing. And I'm very nosy, and so I'm having a really hard time not like going and seeing what's going on.
Well, we
And I
also
lost
just
my
got a group chat message, but I couldn't tell that it was a group chat message. And I was like, oh, what is this? And then I see, like, oh, it's in the chat we're in. Why are they up this time of day? Is everything okay? Everything's fine. There's apparently a funny video.
I thought you were gonna say it's from my husband, and I was like, well, maybe you can tell me what's going on in my own yard because he's up right now. He's out there, and that's why I didn't get up because I was like, he's here, he's home this morning. He'll go see what's going on. It's gonna be okay. Um, so for me, when I was thinking about this, how do we get out? How do we get out of this state of fear for our kids? Um, it's not so much about controlling our kids. It's about thinking about ourselves and our own mind and what are we dwelling on and regulating that in order to help us not be so afraid. Um, and one of the things that sometimes is embarrassing for me to talk about and admit that I've done to help me regulate this, because I've realized I get so invested when I hear about stuff going on that's just horrible, like all of the horrible things that are going on in the world, all the frustrating things. And I started this during COVID because I was just mad all the time. And I was just upset all the time at the things that were being done during COVID. Um, Political, don't have to get into it. Just suffice to say, I was upset and mad all the time. Um, and I got to the point where I had to go to Chris and I had to say, okay, I can't watch the news anymore myself.
Hmm.
Because when I start, I go down rabbit holes and I get mad and I stay mad and I can't stop myself and I get just so upset and I can't do this anymore because it's taking up too much of my emotional energy. So I told Chris, I said, I need you to filter this for me. And I need you to be the one who I know and can trust. You're watching the news, you see what's going on. And if there's something important, you can tell me about it. Like if there's something you think I need to know, you can tell me about it. And that has helped so much. And I know that sounds like I'm sticking my head in the sand. I'm not. Um, I'm actually what for me, what it's done is it's allowed me to focus on the things I actually can control and I actually can influence. So it's made me actually a lot closer with some of my friendships because I have the emotional energy to invest in the people around me. And my emotional energy isn't wasted on, oh my gosh, what's happening 3 countries away. I have the emotional energy to stay focused on my family and on home. I have the emotional energy to know what's going on with the people in my church and in my community and keep up with that, like keep up with the more local stuff going on. Um, And it has just given me back a lot of my mental and emotional capacity because my brain is now not taken up with how am I going to solve this global crisis when I actually don't have that much control globally. All I really have control over is my home. And it's refocused me to where I have control, which is in my home and where I can affect things more. And Chris is really good at this. Like he'll give me a recap most days and say, "Hey, this happened in the news. You might want to know about it. People will be talking about it, and this is what I heard." And also, you guys, news is so polarized. Like you can have one story spun 10 different ways. And it can be very difficult to sometimes even figure out what actually happened
Hmm.
because people spin it so many different ways. And so it's helped me loosen my grip on that kind of stuff and really just focus in on the things I really can control. Another thing that's helped me generally with anxiety and with fear, because I find if I can reduce my general anxiety and fear, then my fears about the kids are less. So another thing that has helped me is, and again, this is kind of embarrassing, I can't watch stressful shows. I can't read stressful books. Um, like there are so many shows out there that I would love to watch. I hear great things about them. They are things I'm interested in. An example is Yellowstone.
I was gonna say the same thing.
I I hear from so many people, oh, you would love this. This is so cool. This is right up your alley. And there are so many things about it I would love, but I know that I don't have the emotional capacity to handle it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because I've also been told by many, many people who I trust and who know me well, people in that group chat that Amanda just discussed, it's not a Diana friendly show.
Mm-mm. It's
It's
not.
not. It's not a Diana friendly show. So I don't watch it.
I'll just send you pictures of Rip. It's fine.
And the horses. You gotta send me pictures of the horses too.
How about if I send you a picture of Rip on a horse?
Perfect. I will take that. I'll take that all day long. So like, okay, so reducing my news intake. And I think that's healthy for everybody. Honestly, y'all, if you can't figure out what's going on in the world in 10 minutes, you're not going to figure out what's going on in the world. Like, don't invest that much time in it because it's taking your emotional and your mental energy. And your kids don't need to know. Your kids do not need to
Yes.
be watching the news. Please, please, please shut the news off at breakfast and dinner. Like, don't let that going into their little brain. They don't need to know what's going on in Ukraine.
Hmm.
Like, no, don't do it. So
As I get
for
a news
me,
alert.
For me, I have had to learn to filter and regulate for myself the other things, and that has helped me reduce my fear around parenting. And I know that sounds odd because those things aren't necessarily connected to parenting. But if my general state is better, then I'm better able to handle the things when they do come up. You've got a comment. What is it?
What?
You look like you need to say something. What is it?
Oh, no. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I also had another notification about Sister Wives, and I was like, of course, Cody and Robin did this stupid thing.
Of course they did.
What
That
they
was funny.
do.
I love it. Um, So yeah, I would say for anxiety, be careful what you're consuming. I would also say when you are listening to what your doctor has to say about development, when you're listening to what your teacher has to say about how your kid's doing with reading or math, when you're listening to what the coach or PE teacher is saying your kid should be able to do physically, put that in the context and lens of the fact that our world has unanimously embraced better, faster, more every area.
Mhm.
They have forgotten how to let children be individuals and to grow at their own pace. And they have disregarded the importance of kids being kids. And when I put those developmental things in that lens and in that perspective, it's helped my parenting anxiety a lot. And it's not something that you do once. You have to do it over and over and over and over again because these messages are relentless. Your child is behind. They are not advanced, so they are behind. You need to have them in 5 different sports. My son's 11. He should be in 3 different sports. That's the message that I get all the time. Because he is fast, I am doing him a disservice by not having him in track, by not having him in basketball, by not having him in soccer, because he is fast. Instead of, he's fast. Let him enjoy being fast just for the fun of being fast.
Mhm.
Let him get the thrill of riding his bike down the hill as fast as he can without wrecking it. That by itself is valuable. I don't have to put it in the context of sports in order for him to enjoy and find value in being fast.
Mhm. And I know without a doubt, if he was to come to you and say, "Mom, this soccer thing looks really, really fun. I want to try that."
Mhm.
Like, okay, bud, let's go.
Yeah,
We'll do some research.
we figure out a way to try it.
Hmm.
But he's not interested.
Yeah.
Genuinely does not care about sports. Chickens, he's real interested in chickens. So we do 4-H.
Hmm.
He loves it and he's satisfied with it. And to satisfy his fast craving, he runs down hills and he rides his bike.
Yep.
So I think so. Another thing that comes into this that I really liked was he talked about combat this fear. The end of the day, when you're going to bed, and I thought you would like this part too. He said, look back at your day and do a meditation practice. And he said, take 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, and think about when your child helped you mix up pancakes, how much fun they had. Think about when they brought you a flower, how pretty it was, and how they were thinking of you and they wanted to bring it to you. Think about look on their face, like Ed, when he's riding down the hill as fast as he can and he's so proud of himself and having a blast. Think about when they came and gave you a hug. Think about maybe that hard situation that you were able to help them resolve. Like E getting off of the chair. Like, yeah, you can do this. You got it. You figured it out. Um, Meditate on those things, and it helps you to put the good and the hopeful things back into perspective and into priority in your view.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, we spent a lot of time on that question. um,
That's a good
but I think
question.
it's good to remember like we should be having hope. Like we don't want our kids' childhood colored by fear. And if we are afraid, then that's what our kids' childhood is going to be colored by is fear.
Yeah.
Um, so the other one that I had was doing all this simplifying. I think that it's a common and reasonable question after doing all these things to ask, they be bored? What are you going to do if they're bored? And what do you think, Amanda? Are they going to be bored?
They probably will be bored. So there is something I don't know what's happening. I heard my kid and husband are still asleep.
Uh-huh.
I have not heard my kid, but
Uh-huh.
Betty, my husband is tearing the house apart like board by board in there. I don't know what he's doing. I heard him like tossing and turning in the bed, and then I just heard like stomp, 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 stomp. I don't know. And I know he can hear me saying this. I'm not hearing a response, but I'm also still not hearing our kid's voice. So I don't know what, bro. I don't know. Anyway,
Maybe he's packing.
That would be wonderful. But I do think kids will be bored. But boredom is a wonderful thing. Me and our developmental interventionist were discussing the other day that every year that she's in this job, when she comes out to a new home, children are less and less creative. And I saw a post the other day that we're losing the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musks, the Albert Einsteins.
Yes.
We're losing all of these people in this world.
You're, you're losing your Van Goghs and your
Yeah,
Mozart. Like we have like the artists and musicians and composers.
because kids aren't allowed anymore. Well, it's not even that they're not allowed. We're not telling our children don't be creative. We're telling our children you don't have to be creative. Here's
We'll
this thing,
entertain you.
and this is exactly how it works, and this is exactly what it does, and this is exactly what it's supposed to do.
And this is
This is
exactly how
how
you
you
play
play with it.
with the script.
Hmm. And he was talking, and it's something I've caught myself doing even before he mentioned it, and like I've been trying to cut back on it some. But like we go outside and play. What is this? Oh, well, this is a flower and it does this, and this is what you can do with it. Like my aloe plant. Mama, what is this? Well, this is an aloe plant, and when you get a sunburn, you pull this off, and then you can. Do you see this inside of it? Oh, how cool! And like, look what we can do with it. But also, like, I'd never seen an aloe plant until I owned an aloe plant, and those things are wild looking. I'm like, Mama, what is this? What do you think it is? What do you think it looks like? What do you think we could do with it? And he was out there, like, after your visit, I went out and plucked the two pieces. I don't know what you call those. They're not leaves, are they?
And that's the best word for them.
Leaves, stalks, something? I don't know.
Palm leaf. Yeah.
I
It,
plucked those off.
I think they're technically like stems.
That makes sense. But he was like, Mama. And he wanted to hold it, and he held it. And like the end is prickly, and so like it pricked him, and he's like, Mom. And I was like, well, don't hold it like that. If you hold it like this, it's not going to do that. And he held it like that. And he goes, oh, ah. I was like, yeah. Do you want to go put this in the fridge? Yes. And he goes in and he has this little, and he just puts it in there. And like, he also drew on my floor out of boredom
Yeah.
with a marker.
Yep. Mhm.
Hardwood and towel. Love that for me. And a red expo marker. Thank
Nice.
God it's expo.
Yep. Yep.
But like,
Why we
we
only have washable
oftentimes,
crayons.
yeah, we oftentimes like over explain things to our kids and we don't let them learn what it could be. Like, if they pick up a stick, what is this stick? What is this? Well, oh, that's a stick. It came off that tree and it's really just garbage at this point. Instead, like, well, what do you think this could be used for? This is the name of it, if you want to know the name of it. What can you do with it? And like, look at all of the really cool things that kids can figure out. Like, it's a sword, it's a spoon, it's, whatever. Super cool. But yeah, sorry,
um,
I'm giving really long responses because this is like I've really enjoyed this more than I wanted to enjoy this.
if you wanted to enjoy it,
I wanted to hate
right?
it.
Right? I know. Me too. I was like, there's no way. This sounds horrible. Um,
Yeah.
you talked about the stick, and I'm trying to remember who AJ has a quote, and I don't know who he was quoting. Maybe he can tell us if he listens to this later. But he said, my greatest fear is not that when a child picks up a stick, it's a sword or a gun, but when a child picks up a stick, it's a stick, that they've lost the ability to see it as something else, to imagine it as something else. And you don't get to imagine it as something else unless you've got room and freedom to do so and the necessity to do so. Like boredom gives you the necessity to imagine. Boredom is the necessity for you to be creative and for you to create and do things. Um, my thought when I wrote this is, yeah, they probably will be bored at first. That's a good thing
Mhm.
because it's going to be the catalyst for them to do so many cool things and to have a world of their own and to do so many different things and learn things. Um, he says he had a quote, and uh, I keep saying his wrong name wrong in my head. Kim John Payne says, "So much activity develops a reliance on outer stimulation, a culture of compulsion and instant gratification. A lot of creativity happens with space and stillness. And we are cultivating a culture that cannot tolerate space or stillness.
Mhm. Yeah.
We don't know what to do with it. It is uncomfortable to be still. It is uncomfortable to not be entertained. It is uncomfortable to be bored. And instead of leaning into that discomfort and saying, okay, what can I do in this space and creating something, we run away from it, be entertained, and as we see it as a problem to be fixed
Mhm.
instead of an opportunity to do something new or more. So kids will probably be bored at first, but then they're going to get to cultivate their own inner world and monologues and questions and ideas, like you were talking about with E. Um, I think also being able to be bored will eventually foster contentment and peace because the real world, the natural world, doesn't go at the pace of entertainment and media and these stuffed schedules and homes that we've come to think are normal. Like that's not the pace the real world moves at. So when you're able to slow down a little bit and reduce a little bit, you're going to find some contentment in real things instead of continually seeking the next high, the next thing that's going to entertain you. Like that culture, like you said, the culture of compulsion and instant gratification. I need it now. Um, so just maybe for encouragement, I'm not trying to brag. This is something that we've worked hard to cultivate. But if you're afraid of this as a mom, like you're afraid of reducing TV time or reducing toys or reducing things in your schedule, um, or some parents, they love to buy stuff for their kids, and there's nothing wrong with buying stuff for your kids. But if you're afraid of stepping back on those things, can I give you an example of my kids? Um, we have very limited TV time. And I'm not saying that they don't watch TV, it's just very limited. And we try to keep it that way because honestly, they get cranky when they watch too much TV. Um, I couldn't give you a time. When they were little, I could give you a time. They only got 20 minutes a day. Like that was it. That was their limit when they were little bitty, but they're bigger now and there are days though that we don't watch any TV. There's lots of days we don't watch any TV. It doesn't come on. They don't play video games. They don't do anything digital for days at a time. Um, they each get 2 hours of video games a week, and that happens across Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. Those are the only times they play video games, unless they're at Shane and Amanda's house, and then they get special treats and they get to play more because it's fun. Um, they, in spite of that, we don't have a ton of toys. Y'all, we are poor. Okay. We live on one income. And so we don't have a ton of toys. We don't have a ton of things to entertain them in the house. They have toys, but not a whole bunch of them. And they're seldom bored. We don't do sports. We don't have music lessons right now. We have in the past. They will eventually have co-op, so they have friends that they play with in co-op and stuff like that. They have friends. We do those things, but they're seldom bored. We don't do those things every day. They instead of that, they board games, do puzzles. We have this gigantic puzzle that has been out for 3 weeks, and it's making my husband bonkers. Um, but we keep piddling with it. We keep going back to it and working on it. They have at least 5 forts in our field and yard that they go and they play with. They go play with their chickens. They play with their dog. They dress up the cat. They dress up their dolls. They help me in the garden. They pick flowers. They know more herbs and weeds than I do. I have to go look up weeds for them to identify because they want to know what they are. They ask the questions. They know more birds than I do on sight and sound because I have an app on my phone that I let them look up the birds. We have a swing set. That thing is used so much and they love it. Um, they paint, they make up their own songs, they make up their own poems, they write letters to friends, they draw and they color. It's going to be okay.
Mhm.
It's going to be uncomfortable at first, but I promise you it will be beautiful after they've learned to be bored and then do something with that boredom. There were two bigger, complicated topics that I wanted to tackle, but I feel like we're kind of running out of time. So maybe we'll have another conversation later or even just on our own. But the one of the big ones that I would encourage our listeners to look into in the book and read the book for is something that he has coined cumulative stress reaction. He calls it CSR. And it's very similar in symptoms to PTSD. But the difference between CSR and PTSD is PTSD typically has one big T traumatic event happening, sometimes more, but there's typically one big T trauma event that we can trace it back to. When I was talking to Chris about this, my husband, he said that CSR is actually, we've recently defined what he's calling CSR as more like complex PTSD, where it's a continual buildup of little T, like little stressors that build up and build up and build up, and you never have time to decompress from them, and you don't have any space away from them. And it has developed into what Kim John Payne calls CSR, cumulative stress reaction. Um, During this section, it made so much sense to me when he was talking about this. And it is the biggest motivator for me to simplify for my kids is to avoid them dealing with this chronic overload of stress that we don't even really recognize because it's become our daily normal things. Like we go this and we do this and we do this and we do this and we do this and we have this and we put away this and we have all these decisions that they have to make all day long. And we think it's just normal, but it's actually accumulating into almost a disorder for our kids that they have to cope with now. And when we can simplify things, it gives them breathing space and it restores their resiliency. Yes, that's what I'm looking for, is by giving them simplified spaces and simplified schedules, we can build in room for resiliency. And that's kind of what you addressed with adding things on to them as they mature and as they're ready for it, instead of just overloading their schedule before they're ready for it. It gives them a chance to build that resiliency, the ability to cope with more and more and more as it comes along. So that would be a really big one that I wanted to talk about, but I don't think we're going to have time. Um,
Um, I will just say, just to kind of tag along to that, like, we're not saying make your children weak. We're not
mm-mm.
saying raise them weak.
We're not saying put
But
them in a bubble. No.
yeah, if you're going to the gym and you're wanting to build muscle, you don't start at lifting 150-pound weights every time. You start, like Diana and I, we were talking about doing barbell stuff.
Yeah.
We don't use weights.
Nope.
We're not ready yet. We're not there. We have to have just the bar.
Mm.
And that's okay. because within a few months, we can add on a weight. And within a few months from that, we can add to that weight and we can
Yes.
increase. It's the same thing with your kids. Like, you don't, in order to help build their resiliency and build their emotional, mental strength, you don't say, oh, well, the world's tough, so I'm going to be tough on you. You don't say, here, you need to figure out how to work 50-hour work week at 3 years old
Right.
because you have so much stuff to do. You slowly build, slowly increase over their childhood to prepare them for adulthood.
Right. Right. You don't give them adult level expectations when they're still a child.
Mhm.
I think using the exercise metaphor too, you can't go to the gym every single day and do extreme workouts every single day on every part of your body and expect to see good results.
Yeah.
You have to build in rest. Rest is part of the process. Rest is your body restoring and repairing those muscles. And without the restoring and repairing part, you're never going to see progress and you're actually just going to get worse over time. Your body's going to get chronically fatigued if you're pushing it so very hard in all aspects all the time. That's why you have a leg day and an arm day and a back day and a shoulder day. Like, you separate them so that you give the other parts of your body rest. It's the same thing with our kids. So many of us don't have any kind of rest built into our lives so that we have a chance to process and recover and repair. And our kids suffer so much more from that because they don't have the same resiliency that we do as adults to cope with the ongoing stress. So that's what we're talking about, is building in a space in your life, in your home, but also in your schedule for the recovery and the repair to happen, um, and to process what's going on. So dig into the cumulative stress response in this book. I think it's fascinating and very eye-opening for me. Like, you see so many kids, I hear parents all the time, my child will only wear this shirt, the
Mhm.
only shirt they want to wear. They have to have a particular schedule or they flip out. They will only eat this one or two foods all the time. That's all the foods they eat. And he talks about this in here, and it's a result of this cumulative stress response. They're trying to find some form of control and normalcy in their life. And the only way they can do it is by controlling these tiny little things that are in their control, that they can say they that they can control and have a say in. Sorry, I'm fumbling with my words a lot. Um, so that was one would encourage you to dig into. Another one that we'll have to talk about another time because my husband's like, come on, let's go. Um, he touches on attachment parenting a lot, and I don't know that he ever actually calls it attachment parenting. I would have to listen to it again. I don't think he ever actually says the phrase attachment parenting, but what
He
he's
only calls
talking
it
about,
helicopter parenting.
well, there's helicopter parenting and then there's attachment parenting, and they're two different things. Because the helicopter parenting is that over excessive presence and control
Mm.
and fear, while attachment parenting is um, the trust versus mistrust when kids are little bitty. So attachment parenting is kind of like contrasted with cry it out method, for example.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by the attachment parenting, is the contrast to cry it out, where he's like, no, you should respond to your children, especially when they're little. And they need to know they can trust you. And when they know they can trust you, it builds this foundation of security. And they know that you are home base. Like, you're this safe place that they can come back to. And if they know they have this safe place to come back to, then they feel confident to go out and explore and then come back to home base. And I
Mhm.
really liked the way he constructed that, where you have this more intense attachment when they're small and when they're little and they need to learn trust. And you
Mhm.
get to build on that as they get bigger and they get to go out and explore things. So those were two areas that we didn't quite get to touch on. I wanted to finish up with, um, I don't know if this is a hard question or not, but he gives multiple areas in the book to simplify. He talks about toys, he talks about clothes, he talks about food, he talks about schedule. He talks about, filtering out the adult world with media and information input. He talks about extracurricular activities like sports. When you're thinking about the book, what was the easiest area for you to think about simplifying? And what was the most difficult area for you to think about simplifying to finish off
Um,
our discussion today?
the easiest was definitely the clutter.
Mm,
So much so that I had to pause from reading this book because my husband and I spent a week cleaning out our garage. The idea of cleaning out the garage
huge.
was huh?
It was a huge task.
Yeah, massive. But the idea was if we have the garage cleared, we'll have more space. If we have more space, we can start to clear out. The most important one was the kitchen.
Mhm.
If we take stuff out of the kitchen and put that up, now meal times are so much simpler. And once that's done, we can start going through his clothes. We can start going through his toys and not getting rid of the toys, but creating a toy library. So in this big box is all trucks, and this big box is all dolls or whatever. Putting those in the garage, only keeping so many out. That was like, I can't wait to do this. I'm so excited about this. Simplifying our schedule because we're foster. And so we have so many expectations. And at the same time, my child is showing some problems. And so we can't get into occupational therapy to help him. And the weeks that we can have gymnastics and swim and therapy and intervention appointments, I see a difference in my child's behavior for the better. But because we have all these things, we're constantly on the road, we're constantly on the go. So I'm working on it. I'm working on figuring it out, how to fix it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Velcro board with different things, like 3 different tasks, 3 different things. Like, okay, we're in the car. What we're doing is we're going to stop for lunch, and then we're going to go to swim, and then we're going to go shopping.
Mhm.
Where do you want to stop for lunch? Here are 3 options. Pick where you would like lunch from the logos. He picks, we put it up there. This is where we're going. You have had a help in creating the schedule without being too involved. This is where we're going. This is what you can expect. I'm
And
hoping it
with
works.
right, well, and with simplifying your schedule, he's not saying take out everything. Like he's not
Mhm.
saying don't do anything, but it helps by doing that. So he knows what to expect. And
Yeah.
you have time built in there for rest and for stopping. But for kids to be able to know every Wednesday is swim day. And
Mhm.
our developmental interventionist comes this day every week. Like this is our rhythm. Having things that are predictable for your kids helps their security so much. And them knowing ahead of time helps so much. So you're saying that the easiest with tackling the space and the challenging one is tackling the schedule.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the parents that I know that I wanted something every time I went somewhere, and I got something most of the times that I went somewhere. I want to do that for my kid, especially since my kid has his own debit card.
Hmm.
Um, I wanna buy those things for him. He genuinely is one of these kids that deeply and truly loves and appreciates every single toy we've ever brought into this house. He's not the kid that, like, plays with something for 5 minutes and throws it down. He loves his toys, but we have too many.
Hmm.
We have way too many, and it's overwhelming, and our interventionist talks about, like, when we walk into Six Flags, there's so much all around us. And it can be overwhelming for us, and it's the same way for our children every morning that they wake up and see all of the options they have to play with.
Yeah.
And yes, it's all gonna be fun, and we're gonna really enjoy everything, but
Hmm.
it is overwhelming and stressful how much, and it's overstimulating.
Hmm. Yeah. For me, one of the easiest things to tackle when I was reading this book was honestly clothes. That was one of the first places we started because Tori gets a lot of hand-me-downs from Edie and from other kids because she's the smallest. And her drawers were overflowing with clothes. And it was overwhelming for her to pick out clothes to wear. And then when it came time to put clothes away, she's like, I don't know how to get them put away because they don't fit in my drawers. It was very frustrating. So when I was reading this, that was one of the first things that I tackled was the clothes for everybody. I went through and I was like, what fits, what doesn't fit, what do you actually wear, what has stains? And we reduced clothes a lot. That was one of the easier things to go through. We already do pretty minimal media. I'd already done a lot of work on that in our home, especially for the kids. That's one that I need to work on for me though, because one of the things that he talks about a lot is kids are always watching and they know what you find valuable by what you put your time into and what you give your attention to.
Mhm.
And even though I work on it and try to be conscious about it, I still feel like I put way too much time and attention into my phone. And it's hard because our phones now have everything. Our phones are our
Yeah.
pocket computers, our communication device, our camera, our memory system, our calendar, everything is on our phone. And so it makes it very difficult to not be on your phone all the time. It's very convenient to be on your phone all the time. So some of the ways that I have been trying to adjust this is um, keeping more physical notebooks. I keep a physical calendar in my purse and on my wall, so I'm not using my phone for my notes or my calendar all of the time. Um, I actually delete the Facebook and Instagram apps off of my phone during certain parts of the week. So I don't even have the option of getting on it during certain parts of my week. Um, and just generally trying to set it down plugged in instead of keeping it on me all of the time. And that has helped me. And that's my challenge personally right now, simplifying, further simplifying my media intake for myself. Um, Another one that's been challenging is with summer, I feel like our schedules have been so unpredictable and so off because we don't have our rhythm of school, we don't have our rhythm of co-op, um, and we don't also have the excuse of school to just stay home because I use
Yeah.
school a lot as like, oh, we got to stay home. We can't go do those things because we need to be home and do school. So I'm very much looking forward to fall and starting back into school to help get our schedule back under control. But my kids are a little older too, and so they have more resiliency already with the change in the schedule and the weeks being different one to another. But I do see when we get too full, he talks about that soul fever where you just start having
Oh, yeah.
overwhelmed, so easily overwhelmed. I can see that in my kids. And that's a cue to me like, okay, we got to cut back. Time to take a little break and cut back, just like I would if they had a physical fever. So anyway, those that's what I had. And there's so much more. I could talk about so many things in this book. I feel like it's difficult to do it justice because there's so much in this book and it's so rich. And I encourage our listeners to go read it for themselves and to go listen to the interview with Jenny Urich where she talks to Kim John Payne. And also, I think at the end of this month, she has another interview with him about this book specifically if you are a book club member. And I don't know if you have to be a member or if you have to sign up for it or not. But if you do, go to her website and check it out. I'm sure the information is on there. And I'm looking forward in particular to listening to her interview over this book with him at the end of the month. So thank you, friend, for talking with me. And for all of our listeners, thank you so much for being with us and hanging out and enduring our randomness in our schedules at times. We really appreciate you.
Yes.
And
I'll try
we,
my best. We will try to be better for the fall season.
yes,
Summer
that is our
season
goal.
was rough. It was
It's
harder than
challenging.
last year.
It was. It was. Um, it's been harder to get our recordings in and then for editing and for social media even for getting that on a regular schedule. All of those things have been really challenging this summer. But fall is coming. Instead of winter is coming, fall is coming, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Um, So, our friends, until next season, we love you and we'll see you soon. And don't forget to look in the beauty for the beauty in your unvarnished life this week. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.